Hi everyone, welcome to In Conversation with Hemali. I hope everyone is taking the utmost care to stay masked and maintaining social distancing. Let us pray the ray of hope and healing reaches everyone in need. I'm welcoming Kartik Das, a chef, writer, and a photographer telling stories about food and the people behind them so we can learn about what we don't know and might be afraid to try. His brand, next favorite food, hopes that people overcome the mental, sometimes even the physical barriers that hold them back from cooking or trying something that sounds foreign in the hope they find something they genuinely love. Karthik was an investment banker, ran operations for a logistic company, and had been an internal consultant at a hedge fund. He says he has since regained his sensibilities and gone back to his original passion for food and people. Such a pleasure to have you here, Karthik. Thank you for agreeing to talk to us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. The session, and my first question to you is, from an investment banker to a chef, writer, and a photographer of food, how did you make that shift?
Yeah, that tends to be the regular question. I think it boils down to I had a moment of clarity where I realized what I was doing and why I was doing it, and it was a introspective moment with a couple of right nudges at the right times. So I went to school for hospitality. I went to Cornell to the hotel school. I always knew I wanted to spend my life focusing on work that created experiences for people that they wouldn't get to experience on a regular basis, or to transport them to places that they might not be able to go to. Right? There's a golden rule in hospitality. So I think most people have heard this. There's the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated. There's a platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. And then there's a double platinum rule, which is treat others in ways they don't yet know they want to be treated. And for me, that was what hospitality is all about. It's about exposing people to stuff that they don't yet understand, but is probably going to improve their lives. And so that was the dream. I always knew I wanted to run my own business and work for myself. So I worked a couple of businesses. I ran a couple of businesses in school. But once we graduated, being a Singapore citizen, staying in the US, I needed a visa. And there were very little options. There were no options in hospitality. And outside of hospitality, because I wasn't an engineer, there really were only two. And it was going into consulting or going into investment banking. I also happened to be a big football fan, and I had gone to a couple of conferences while I was studying there, and I happened to meet David Gill, who was then CEO of Manchester United, the club that I'm a big fan of. And we had 2 minutes with him, and so I said, "This is what I'd like to do. I'd love your job at some point in the future. How do I get there?" And he said, "Well, you live close to New York. If you get the chance, go work in finance, because if you understand how a company runs financially, it'll give you a very clear understanding into how not only to ascend in a corporate environment, but it also will give you the tools to understand strategically what a company should do next." Okay. So that, and a range of my friends told me, investment banking opens a lot of doors, go down that route. So I did. And I have to say, so I was at UBS. I did my internship there, and then I worked there for the first year after graduation. A great team. I had probably the best team I've ever worked with in my life, but it was miserably boring work. Miserably boring work. So I was a financial institutions banker. So I covered banks. So you think of investment banking and investing in sexy companies doing really interesting things. I was investing in banks, looking at deposits and loans and mortgages. And the only thing that kept me there that long was because my team was phenomenal and I learned so much from them in a very short period of time. I always knew it wasn't something I was going to do long term. And so a friend of mine who was at Cornell said, "Hey, you want to come work at a logistics company? We need someone who's got experience running an operation." So I did. I went there. It was a chance to run something on my own. I learned a lot, but it was a horrible culture. And very quickly, I realized I didn't want to be associated with the people who were working there. So I got another opportunity to go work at Bridgewater. So Bridgewater's a hedge fund.
Whoa, that's big.
Yeah, so it's the biggest hedge fund in the world. I actually got very lucky. I was at a dinner in Barcelona. I got invited to a dinner in Barcelona, and the the host happened to be working at Bridgewater, and we connected actually about food. There was a glass of wine that came to the table, and I smelled it. And so the beauty of food and wine is it takes you places. It takes you places you don't often anticipate in the moment. So this was a glass of Sauvignon Blanc sitting in a Spanish restaurant in Barcelona, and it smelled like walking into a Indian vegetable store or going to Mustafa. That's what it smelled like. It was unbelievable. It smelled of green vegetables, like a bit of the incense. And so there was another Indian couple who was there at dinner, and I said, "Smell this and tell me what it reminds you of." And for them, it was Patel Brothers, which is a huge chain here in the US.
Yeah.
And it was, yes, that's exactly what I feel like. And for me, it was reminiscent of going to the markets in the morning with my mother. Even though I hated going to the vegetable stores, it took me back to a place. And now thinking about it now, those are the kind of things I wanted to spend my life doing, creating those experiences and telling those stories. But anyway, I went to Bridgewater. I met some phenomenal people. The culture was very, very interesting, and I realized that's the way I enjoy operating. It's a very truthful environment. There's no mollycoddling. There's no dulling things down. Everything is very, very factual, even if that hurts someone's feelings, because it helps everyone improve. And I love that. I realize that's the way I operate. But I woke up on my 30th birthday and realized, what am I doing with my life? I made decisions based on prestige. I made decisions based on how much money I was making. And I never really enjoyed my work. So for 5 years after graduating, I was quote unquote doing well, but I was pretty miserable. And I basically figured, if I don't take a risk now, and if I don't pursue what I'm doing now, I might never get the chance to do so, because right now I'm free of responsibility. And so yeah, that was, I knew I wanted to be in food. I knew I wanted to, every job I've had, I've always had small side projects where it's been creating experiences or telling stories. And I didn't realize that until I left Bridgewater, that those were the bits I enjoyed the most at each job. And those were the bits that got me recognition from people who were way beyond my pay grade. And so, okay, that's what I wanted to spend my life doing. So that's basically how I made the shift.
Fantastic. Kartik, I just am wondering, you said at 30, you decided to shift to your passion. What kind of support did you get from your friends or family? Were they in support or not?
So that's interesting. It was a very, very different response, right? So my friends were almost too on board. I think when I discussed the idea and the plan in general, the general response was, finally, it took you long enough. Because everyone was quite confused when I went into banking. They knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but they realized why I did it. And my brother had a very similar response. He did take some pleasure in reminding me, though, that it took me a long time to get there, to get to where I needed to be. After leaving college, he went down, he took an internship, he took a job in a field that was completely different to what he studied, but because he knew he wanted to go down that route. And the first couple of years were difficult, but he's done phenomenally well. And now, he runs product for a pretty sizable, he's head of product for a pretty sizable company out here in London. And that's the path that makes sense. Again, he was very, very supportive. For my parents, I think they were a little more confused by the decision. And I think that's where a bit of the different generational gap came in. I think for my folks, it was, here's a 6-figure salary at a prestigious company that if they mentioned to a friend, everybody's like, oh, wow, he works at Bridgewater. And so it took a little more time. But with any major decision in my life, I always lay it out for my dad, because he's always been extremely supportive of me. Even when the decisions he would have made might have been different. But I always explain the logic to him, because if there's a flaw in the logic, he will point it out.
Right.
And so when I decided to make the switch, I explained the rationale to him, and he said, okay, that makes sense. I'm here if you need anything.
Fantastic. Right.
I think growing up, something that I've always remembered, my dad always said, it's your life. I can't live it for you. I can tell you what I would do, in that situation, but I can't bear the consequences. Only you can, and I shouldn't be involved in sharing the victories because you got. So whichever way you do, you have to own your decision.
Right.
And so, even though I think at the time he didn't understand it, he was still very supportive, and he understood that he didn't see things the way that I did, and that was massive.
Absolutely.
I think for a lot of us, call it 35 and under, the focus with the work is more purpose driven, and it's okay. Yes, I want to live a relatively comfortable life, but I don't need the end all be all of everything. I want to make sure that every day I'm working, I am thoroughly enjoying what I do, and there's a bigger picture behind it. And so, again, there's a part of me that says I made the change because if I don't try this now, I'm never going to. But if for some reason in 2, 3, 5 years, if this doesn't work, with my background and what I've done, there will always be a fail safe of going back to get a regular job.
Right.
It would take a lot for me to get there, but I know that if everything fell apart, there's always that option.
And I'm sure I'm sure it's going to work your way because you are determined and you seem to be so passionate about this. Kartik, I wanted to ask can you tell us a little about Next Favorite Food? What is the blog address?
Sure. So it started as a blog, but the focus for Next Favorite Food was always more than just a publication. So then the blog was to kind of get me started. The concept for Next Favorite Food is very simple. I want to showcase people and businesses who are making exceptional things in the food space. That can range from a small sandwich shop, in suburban Connecticut, to a chili oil manufacturer from Sichuan, to, an Indian pickle maker in London, right? The idea is that there are so many people doing phenomenal things, and they might be small, they may not be very popular, but quality is all that matters. And I think every experience is, I hate to use the analogy, but almost like a gateway drug, right? It's if you try something that's close to something that you already know, but is a little different, you're more than willing to try something a little more out there. And so I think about, if someone's not very comfortable with Indian food, for example, if I took the base masala of, I don't want to say a chettinad chicken, right? I'm from the South. I love spice and curry leaves. Okay. If I took the base of a chettinad chicken and I made that into a risotto, and I put that in front of someone who's like, oh, okay, I'm familiar with the concept of risotto, I understand that. And then they understand the flavors, is okay, the vehicle is something I was comfortable with, and now the flavors are interesting. The next step is, this is how chettinad chicken should be eaten, right? And this is how you would do it authentically. So it's all about, okay, let me introduce you to something different, and then let's take you down that journey. So that's the whole concept of Next Favorite Food. And it's sort of different from my personal brand, because I think I realized, again, as I've been formulating this over the last few months, Next Favorite Food is not about me. Next Favorite Food is about other people doing amazing things. On the flip side, what I'm focused on doing, again, is telling stories about, whether that's writing about people. So hopefully in a week or so, I get published for the first time. And so that'll be pretty exciting.
It will be, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're waiting on the article to get approved and be put out there. But then focusing on photography and helping small food businesses. So while I was in New York, I basically reached out to 2 small businesses and said, I can help however I can. I have experience in the kitchen, I have experience running small businesses, and I have experience in writing and photography. So how can I be helpful? And so I'm doing a range of things.
You have all of it together. Now you just need to kind of just throw it across to us. Yes, and we're waiting to read that article. Would you agree that being able to understand, one's passion and being able to pursue, is that success?
Look, I think most people have an understanding what their passion is. I think it's also important to understand that what you're passionate about and what you're good at can be 2 different things. Like, for example, for me, food, since I'm 5 years old, has been a passion. But I think digging deeper, it was telling stories. That was the real important bit. So I think understanding your passion or seeing what's at surface level is important, but then digging deeper to really understand is what will make things click. It's kind of like, have you seen the movie Soul by Disney? So I'm not sure everyone's got a specific purpose on earth, but the idea is that to really dig down and understand what that could be. In the movie, I think he's a pianist, right? But you realize by the end of it, what he's really good at is guiding people, is showing people a different perspective.
Right.
And so I'm very happy I've gotten to that point. Again, I think I'm quite far from any notion of success. It's starting out and it's very bootstrapped, but I have been more happy in the last year of not knowing what could happen. For the last 5 years, where I was collecting a very nice paycheck, going to work every day, and living a pretty comfortable life. I've lived on couches and sofas the last couple of years while I've been traveling, and I could not be happier. So if that's success, sure, I'm pretty happy about it.
I would definitely call it as success, and I'm sure my viewers who are listening to you also would, because finally we're all running towards what we want. And I've heard of so many people, even at the age of 50, they decide to kind of move their careers. Me myself, when I was studying in college, I thought I'm going to be doing something in the travel and tourism industry, and here I am teaching speech and drama, and I just love what I'm doing. So, and I learned I got to know about my passion only when I was 45. So it was much later, for me. Wonderful.
It's fantastic.
So, Kartik, I wanted to say that could you leave a message behind on how one needs to balance out what they want to do and what they're actually doing, especially for the younger generation, who there are so many who are studying what they think they should be, but they're still unsure. Yeah.
Sure. I think for that, I'll say, truly understand the life you want to live. I always thought that I wanted just the luxury lifestyle of a nice house, living in a big city, more money, that I knew what to do with, and a work was just a way to get me there. But for me, I know that being on a plane constantly, being in different environments, hustling every day to figure out where the next project is, that's what fuels me. I don't do traditional weekends anymore, apart from when football is on. That is wholly sick. But other thing is to be ruthlessly honest with yourself, even if it unearths truths you don't like, and then make a decision. Because understand that decision will have consequences, and be very clear that what those consequences are, and if you're okay with them. So, for example, one of my consequences that was difficult to accept at the time was to pursue this path, I would have to rely on others. I wouldn't just be able to rely on myself. I'm a very hugely independent person. I do not like to ask for help. But when I'm in London, I crash with one of my best friends. When I'm back in the States, I crash with my partner. And so I live with the knowledge that these people are investing on me. And that's a pretty big mental toll to take for someone who doesn't like support. Right. So if you want to transition, know yourself and plan. If there's a world in which you can do your day-to-day job while training for the switch or learning about the switch, then great. I know I can't do that. My modus operandi is all in or nothing. And so, do that, and then over communicate with everybody around you, because you'll find that people around you who truly matter will understand and support you, even if they don't understand.
Right. What a lovely message that is, Kartik. Thank you so very much. But I still have something more to ask you, and that is, so when you, what would you tell my audience about the risk aspect, because it was a big risk that you took up.
Yep.
And how does one kind of prepare oneself to take up the risk in order to pursue their passion, but also balancing out, their lives?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in a weird way, the 5 years before I took this risk set me up for being able to take that risk, right? So, having earned a little bit of cash on the side, I had a decent savings buffer. So when I decided to make the change, I said, okay, I know for the next 2 years, I can make no money and still be able to get by. I'm not going to be like, oh, where's my next meal coming from? And so I said, okay, now I know in my head, I've got 2 years to start making money such that I can get back on the ground. And I'm a fairly risk-prone person. I'm not risk-averse. For your Singaporean audience, in my O levels, I was a triple science, advanced bio, advanced chemistry, and geography major. For my A levels, I dropped everything.
You did?
I became history, literature, math, and econ. I dropped everything because I knew it wasn't something I was interested in doing and I wasn't good at it. So I had 2 years to catch up for what people had been studying for 6 years. But again, I know the way I operate. I know that if I like something, I don't see things as I have to have breakfast at 7 o'clock and I have to go to school for this time. 24 hours is my window. So again, that's why it goes back to being honest. For me, I was like, okay, I know I've saved enough money that I can do this. And I know that life I will live with the money I've saved will be less fancy, but it'll be okay. It goes back to what you're willing to lose, right? Most people think they're like, oh, yeah, I can take the risk. I can live on a couch for 6 months. But then the truth is they really don't want to, and they really can't. And you'll realize that when you actually do it.
So I understand from what you say that it does require a lot of planning if you want to take up a risk, right? Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, you have to. It might not require a lot of planning, but it requires an understanding of what you should do. So I made the switch fairly quickly, right? So I made the switch in a period of 3 to 6 months. Right. Some people say, all right, I know that in 2 years I want to do this, and they stop planning now, and that's fine. But even in 3 months, I knew the factors I needed to have in place in order to make that switch, right? So don't rush into anything.
Great. So what I take away from Kartik is, first of all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. We do need to have a little bit of planning done, and we need to spend time with ourselves to understand what we want. So let us all go on that adventure and live the life of our dreams. Thank you, Kartik, for being with us. And viewers, you may follow Kartik on his Insta handle and read his blogs too. The links will be provided in the description. And let us all wish Kartik the best for his journey ahead. And we're waiting to come and dine wherever you're going to serve all those dishes. Yes. Yep. Thank you very much, Kartik.